Okay, well, welcome to the No Script Show, where it is the 9th of July, which means there is 50 days before football season starts in the US. So I'm pretty hype. Yeah.
It just feels like football season never ends in the US.
Listen, bro, football is the second religion of the South, and you will respect it accordingly.
It's like rugby in South Africa. It just never seems to frickin' stop.
Yeah. Oh, and since we're talking about football, it seems there's rumors that Florida State might be moving conferences from the Atlantic Coast Conference to the Southeastern Conference, which is interesting because everybody hates the refs in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and now suddenly that's kicked up a storm. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I personally don't care as long as I get to watch football. So yeah, and and since we're discussing football, fuck you, Jimbo Fisher. That is the official chant of everyone in Florida because he screwed over Florida football. So yeah.
What did you do?
Just like screwed our recruiting process. He just didn't recruit at all while he was coach here. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic! So you're sitting with a bunch of guys that are aging out now.
Yeah. And also fuck you, Nick Saban, Alabama coach. Yeah, because everybody who isn't a fan of his team just hates him. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so but now if Florida's gonna move their league, but I take it currently you guys are playing the other states that are up the Atlantic coast, up the eastern seaboard.
The ACC conference is
like the Carolinas and those.
Who's the full ACC? I can't actually remember the full list of people in the ACC conference.
But if they move, you guys are going to sort of fall in the same one as Texas.
I mean, Texas isn't that far away.
Yeah.
It really isn't. I just can't remember who's in the ACC Atlantic Coast. So remember, Florida has 3 or 4 football teams in multiple conferences. So the current members of the ACC conference are Boston College, Clemson University, Duke University, absolute douchebags, Florida State University, the Florida State, Georgia Tech, nice, University of Louisville, University of Miami, who suck, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, North Carolina State, University of Notre Dame, that's the famous Catholic university, University of Pittsburgh, Syracuse, which is up in Syracuse, New York, University of Virginia, Virginia Polytechnic and State University, and then Wake Forest University.
Yes, that is a long stretch of earth to cover to go and play a football game, dude.
So locations, it's Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, Clemson, South Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, Tallahassee, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, Louisville, Kentucky, Coral Gables, Florida, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Syracuse, New York, Charlottesville, Virginia, Blacksburg, Virginia, and Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
I would like it would be fun to watch if you guys started playing the Texas teams.
The SEC, so Southeastern Conference, would be in terms of current members in the East and West Division is the University of Florida, UF in Gainesville, Florida, University of Georgia, University of Kentucky, University of Missouri, University of South Carolina, University of Tennessee, Vanderbilt University, University of Alabama, University of Arkansas, Auburn University, Louisiana State University, University of Mississippi, Mississippi State University, and of course the legendary Texas A&M University. So that would be Gainesville, Florida, Athens, Georgia, Lexington, Kentucky, Columbia, Missouri, Columbia, South Carolina, Knoxville, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Auburn, Alabama, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm really excited for the Louisiana State University game this year. I'll probably go up there just to watch FSU play LSU. Oxford, Mississippi, Starkville, Mississippi, and of course Collegetown, Texas, for the legendary Texas A&M University.
Ooh, yeah. It sounds like the competition is going to be a bit stiffer. Because there's a couple of relatively big football schools in that list.
ACC is tough, but never forget that Florida State's a legendary football institution, despite its slump in the last 8 years or so, which I blame on Jimbo Fisher. Despite its slump in the last 8 years or so, I mean, leave Willie Taggart out of this. He doesn't deserve the hate, but Jimbo Fisher does. And despite its slump in the last 8 years or so, Florida State has produced quite a few Heisman winners and national champions. Never mind. ACC champions. Yes, they've been champions in their conference plenty of times, but champions, national number one football team champions underneath the late Bobby Bowden. God rest his soul. What an absolute legend of a man, Bobby Bowden. National champions. It's actually quite a few. It used to be not uncommon for FSU to win not just the ACC championship but the national championship every couple of years. It's just a given. They just hit a slump lately, but every couple of years.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to. It sounds like it's going to be much more interesting playing if they move to the East-Western divisions.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to watch. But like you said, the Louisiana one, I think, is going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Actually, I think when was our last Heisman Trophy winner? Because the Heisman Trophy is also a big thing because it's the football player of the year. I can't remember, but it was actually fairly recently. Not to mention, I think we've got several Hall of Famers. Also, it's Burt Reynolds' old school, so Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, the man.
So yeah. But yeah, so a lot has happened since the last episode. Since I don't really have that time to record that much anymore. But yeah, a lot has happened worldwide and stateside. I don't know if you want to cover stuff chronologically because I'm still in a haze.
So much has happened. The guys over at CERN decided reality isn't weird enough, so they're going to go for round 2.
You leave CERN alone. They're doing good work there, okay? They're doing good work.
They are literally ripping our timeline to pieces.
They are doing good work. I will hear no bad words about CERN in my presence. You leave those good people alone. They're doing good work. Okay.
It's like the two things we blame for everything that's gone haywire is CERN and the killing of Harambe.
I love CERN. Okay, I love everything. That
is an absolutely spectacular thing to see. It's one of those things. If you just go through the specs of it, it is unbelievable. The size of that thing is just enormous.
The size of the misunderstanding about what it actually does is also pretty spectacular.
They build mini black holes. There's not much to misunderstand about it.
Oh. That's not. That's part of what they do.
Yeah, but they're doing a lot of interesting work now. It's going to really be interesting to see what comes out now after all the upgrades and stuff they did.
Yeah.
But I've always been kind of disappointed that they never finished the one in Texas.
There was one in Texas. That one I don't remember.
Yeah, there was what in the 80s. Yeah, in the 80s, I think they started building one that was going to be bigger than the one. I think it was the same size, a bit bigger than the one they built than CERN. And then I don't know, the hype around all of that died down, and they never completed it.
It's interesting. Texas doesn't seem like environmentally a good place to build such a thing.
They build those things like a couple of meters under the ground, and Texas has got the space.
I mean, the heat, the dust, the just shittiness of the environment there. No offense to the great state of Texas. I love the great state of Texas. I just don't think like much of the environment in terms of heat and dust is particularly good for building scientific instrumentation, but that's just me.
Yeah. Did you see that? Totally different topic. Did you see what that elephant that killed that woman in India?
I saw memes about it. Apparently, elephant killed.
The elephant trampled the woman. Okay, and then that same elephant pitched up at a funeral and like desecrated her corpse as well, just to make sure that she's dead or something. The same elephant pitched up at the woman's funeral and like just wreaked havoc at the funeral.
I'm still figuring out how the elephant. I'd like to know how the elephant knew where she was, or
I would
like
also
that
like
it
to
was
do
her.
that.
Like there's so many unanswered questions there. Like
that is also sort of like, okay, firstly, how did this? And it goes even further. Apparently, this woman, I don't know, she taunted the elephant or something when she was on holiday, like 160 kilometers away from where she lived. And then the elephant killed her in her hometown. So the elephant traveled like 160
How
k's
does it even know?
to get revenge on the woman, and then pitched up at a funeral a couple of days later as well.
I refuse to believe there's no human intervention here.
It's on the one hand, it's like, okay, that's some dedication from the elephant. On the other hand, you have to think like, yeah, someone trained this elephant as a hitman, which is not a bad way to do it. I mean, if you're going to invest money in a hitman, that's the way to go, because it's not like they're going to arrest the elephant.
Exactly. I was gonna say, like, there's no way it wouldn't know the first thing. Like it's elephants aren't bloodhounds. Despite the length of their prehensile noses, they're not bloodhounds. They're not going to be tracking her by scent. They're just like that amount of wilderness and whatever. No, I don't think this was purely an organic revenge movie, Kill Bill style, with like an elephant in a jumpsuit, like a yellow and black jumpsuit. Like, no, there was some human intervention here. There's just no way. There's no way there was no human intervention.
Can you imagine in a couple of months, like a Bollywood style Tarantino movie comes out?
I mean, have you seen like most Bollywood movies? Like it's like it wouldn't, like, have you seen those memes of like Bollywood movies? Like, I've seen them, and it's like, yeah, I've seen some of those movies, and I'm like, yo, this wouldn't be totally out of place in one of those movies, honestly. Like,
no, it won't. But yeah, that was. But is everything? I take it the recent developments from your Supreme Court didn't have much effect in Florida. Because you've got like the only decent governor in the place.
Do you mean the Supreme Court upholding the Second Amendment, or in New York, or the Supreme Court deciding that, hey, you guys get to vote on whether or not you kill your babies?
Yeah, well, both of them, because I know the New York political scene kind of had a bit of a meltdown over the Second Amendment ruling.
Okay, first of all, the New York. So let's get into that. First of all, I just want to say it's a move of pure tactical genius, releasing the Second Amendment thing just before the Roe thing, because they are so consumed by Roe that it's almost completely flown under the radar, the whole Second Amendment thing. So let me put it to you this way: I I'm well acquainted with the city of New York. It's a wonderful city. It's unfortunately infested with New Yorkers. It is a city that has fallen into disrepair in the last 6-7 years. And one of the issues is rampant crime and the recent ideology of soft on crime rehabilitation thing. And I think people in the West, at least those on the more progressive end of the political spectrum, are going to learn some things. And one of those things is, as we say in the black community, some niggas are just fucked up. You can't rehabilitate these niggas. And that's the problem with the soft on crime ideology, is that some niggas are just fucked up. And New York, like when you had, I remember hearing the story, one of the ladies, I can't remember her name, is like a homeless advocate lady who was advocating for like the homeless to sleep. Let me pull it up. Homeless advocate. Pull that up. We really still need to do that. Yes, New York City woman fatally pushed into path of Times Square subway train, spent 10 years helping homeless. Michelle Alyssa Go, she was a advocate who worked with uplifting the homeless and all that, and underserved communities, and like things like, let the homeless sleep in the subways at night, because it's just warm and who cares, you're not there, and all that, and lots of little things like that. And do you know how she died? She got pushed, as per this headline, she got pushed in front of a subway train after a decade of service to the homeless by a mentally ill homeless person. And that is, first of all, an absolute tragedy, but second of all, a painful instance of no good deed goes unpunished.
That's our universe for you.
And the thing is, this goes on with the idea of that just let them live as their truth of who they are. Like, this is not kind. This is not.
But
compassionate? Letting mental illness run rampant in the home. Like, we need to go back to having laws where you can have people involuntarily committed under certain circumstances, because this is a clear instance.
I saw some stats the other day that I think in the 60s or 70s you had one beds in mental health facilities. Now you had one bed for every 1,000 people in the States. And currently, it's like you have one bed for every 3,400 people in the United States in a mental health facility. There are scores of, and the sad thing is, not just in the States, it's globally, like all your quote unquote Western countries, where there's scores of people walking around the streets that should actually be institutionalized. You can just go to Twitter, half of them are there.
Nice setup.
But that's a big. And I've seen a couple of people sort of starting to discuss it the last couple of months. But that is a big problem.
Well, and mental, I was trying that, and mental health, and just even if the people are mentally healthy, just like the level of opportunistic crime that has risen. When you have some of the richest areas in California and New York, especially in New York City, that you see burglar bars everywhere, that some stores in certain areas of California are only open till like 3-4 p.m. in the afternoon, and then they close and they shutter up because when you make it such that somebody can come into a place and take a certain number, let's say under $1,000 worth of stuff, and it's not a crime that you'll punish in any way or form, then people are going to take under $1,000 stuff. And you'll see, surely you've seen a bunch of the stuff all over the place, with people just going into stores, or just like even certain crimes, just like, misdemeanor or whatever, just low level muggings, especially in very high impact areas like New York, that are just not pursued for a variety of reasons. And what this has to do with my whole point with the Second Amendment thing is that now that people are going to be armed. In fact, I think there was a case recently of some dude who shot somebody in his store and defended himself in his bodega, and they prosecuted the dude defending himself.
Yeah,
But,
I saw that they actually just dropped his bail application to like I think $500 or $1,000 from something ridiculous like $50,000 bail that they set for him because he defended his own life. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
But wasn't it New York as well where the churches was the churches let the homeless people sleep, allowed the homeless people to sleep in the churches at night, and then they went and made it illegal.
I'm not sure about that.
I think it was New York where they did that as well. But the problem is that's not a new problem in New York. New York has always been a shithole.
I mean, it's
for
seen
a
better.
very, very long time.
It's seen better and worse times. Like there have been, it goes through ups and downs, but it's definitely at a down spree. And
it is.
Like I said, the point, my whole point with this is with the Second Amendment thing is that what you're going to see now, I think more likely, especially with the advent of more easy concealed carry, is that more people are going to. I mean, in the last in the US, the last 2-3 years, the number of people who have taken up arms who are not, you're what people consider the average gun owner to be some, stereotypical, supposedly, underground racist straight white man. No, the actual number of people who are taking up arms are actually mostly women and racial minorities. But what I think is going to happen, especially in New York with this new advent, is that you are going to see a spike eventually in a year or two of opportunistic criminals who fuck around and then they find out the hard way. And that'll be unfortunate because, as much as I despise crime, I don't revel in people killing and dying. But it's
I don't know, dude. If you're going to go ahead and infringe other people's basic right of just being of bodily autonomy and being safe, then you kind of give up your right to breathe. That's just the way I see it. I mean, it's not like, because I saw some dipshit lady on Twitter the other day that she actually made the argument that 99 or 98% of rape victims survive. So it's not right for to say arm women so that they can defend against rapists because they're going to survive it in any case. I'm like, what? How that?
A friend of mine on Twitter is like, she was like, I'm going to turn into a psycho if somebody tries to rape me. Like, I'm going to kill them. I'm like, I get that. It's just, again, I guess the part of me is like, as much as I despise it, I also like, I don't revel in the idea of having to kill people, but anyway,
the fact that the situation is like that is regrettable. I agree about that, but I mean, it's there. Then it's war effectively, and we all know if you go off measures in war, you lose.
That's true. So I think that the instances of fuck around and find out will spike for a while, and then when criminals generally realize, as in states like Florida, where you have like the stand your ground law, criminals are generally less opportunistic because they understand that you will get plugged. And I think the criminals of New York will likely find that out over the next 2-3 years, and that in spite of soft on crime policies, in spite of all that, citizens defending themselves is probably going to play some role in driving down the rate of crime in New York City.
But I also think what's going to happen is the state government's going to respond by putting some more funds into the police forces to try and get the police to stop the crime before.
The number of places that have reversed on their defund the police initiatives is hilarious.
Because what they're going to do is, and that's the typical New York or California thing to do, is like, oh shit, the citizens are protecting and defending themselves. Okay, let's get more police there and get them to do their jobs better so that we stop the crime before it gets to the citizens, because the citizens aren't as soft on punishment as we are.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the second, and yeah, like I said, it's regrettable, but it's probably the way it's going to go. So that's the first part with the whole road thing. And by the way, while we're talking about the whole policing and the defund the policing, I know a lot of people in the libertarian community are like, ooh, it's actually interesting to me. It's sort of like horseshoe theory, where like a lot of people in libertarianism, especially the libertarian right, including especially the libertarian left, but some people in the libertarian right, and a lot of like hard leftists sort of horseshoe converge on this all cops are bad thing, and that's the one thing I don't fall into with the libertarian movement, where I'm like, listen guys, half of you are in your 30s and 40s and you sound like petulant teenagers spouting bullshit on Twitter like, ooh, cops are bad. I get it. There's a lot of problems with I'm what you call a minarchist, which is I don't believe in like full on ANCAP in Capistan. I think that, and like many good economics and sociology professors say, some people will always have a comparative advantage when it comes to violence. And so that's why I doubt Ancapistan can really truly work. I would rather have a very localized, where the policing is diminished to the most local level, a localized, accountable to the communities, well-trained police force, but very localized. But so, I'm pretty much a classic minarchist, where I say, you know what, yes, I would like to privatize a lot of things, but I still think, yes, a very devolve to the lowest level government as possible, small as possible. So things like, yes, it's fine to still have a police force, it is fine to still have a standing military, and it is fine to have the government in charge of the judicial system. That I think if you have them in charge of things like that, and those things alone sort of thing, then you can sort of ensure protecting everyone's rights, which is the government's only duty in my eyes, is just protecting your rights. Everything else that's on you. But I know a lot of ANCAPs are like, no, privatize absolutely everything. I'm like, cool, enjoy your private security when somebody else pays them twice as much to assassinate you.
I'm big on privatize nearly everything, but with the police, it depends on the system that they're using. Like in South Africa, I have no time for the police, none at all. They shouldn't exist. But if you go to if you look at like the states where I don't know how it works in the big metropolitans, it's probably a bit different. But I know you guys, the smaller towns and stuff, they've got like the sheriff, and the sheriff is elected, and then he's got his deputies, and that system works better, especially if there's some checks and balances to cut out your corruption. So because that has happened in the past, where sheriff gets elected, but he gets elected because he's friends with the right people in the town. It's like a remnants of the old factory towns that used to be big especially in the Midwest. But that system is a lot better, because it's chosen the local people in the town or in the area choose the sheriff, and they said that he polices them. It's a much better system. The minute it gets to state police or national police or anything like that, it's just no. It's a bad idea, and I really don't like it. It's like I've said recently, because our police force in South Africa is in utter shambles. But it's gotten to the point where I can't see now. And I hear the argument that some people make, like Gideon will say, like, there's a lot of good policemen out there, and he's right. As people, they are good, but the mere fact that they join the police force drops them a couple of points in my book, because the police force is corrupt to the core. The couple of good ones that are there don't make a blip on the radar. All they're doing is they're propping up a bad system. They're keeping the admin going.
I mean,
that's and they keep giving the people hope that, the police force can be reformed. No, it cannot. Scrap the whole thing. Devolve it down to community level.
That's what I say. Devolve it down, and also in the state, get rid of. This is why. So again, this is why I say nuance is gone. But like I say, libertarians are right in that we should get rid of things like qualified immunity and police unions. In fact, I oppose unions in general. I oppose unions in general that are funded by taxpayer money. Like I oppose unions. In general, I know that can be some exceptions, but in general, I oppose unions. So Yeah, I think it can be devolved down. And
because if you think about it, I mean, there's no need for a national police force in any country. With the technology that we have today, you can have regional police forces, or like sheriffs or whatever. And I mean, it's simple. They're on a system. So if one guy does something in town A and scoots across the state lines, and he gets pulled over in a traffic stop in town B, the one or two states over, you run the plates or you run these ID number, and you can say, oh, this guy's wanted for that there. Arrest him, extradite him to the other guys. There you go. Here's your bad guy. Which I don't know, because I get the feeling that they don't have a system like that in America, or they're still busy implementing it.
I'm not sure on that one.
Because I've seen a lot of things where
you wanted it in several states at a time. I know that it is possible to run your plates and be wanted in several states.
Yeah, but I mean that takes away the need for state police or national police. I mean, we're not even going to get going on absolute clusterfucks like the FBI and all of that shit. Just because that's just
I don't know what you're talking about. I, for one, love the FBI and the CIA. I fully support them and the mission. I, for one, am a happy United States citizen who loves the FBI and the CIA, the NSA. They're here for our protection and the good of this country. So yeah, no, but yeah. That was the first thing, and then I guess you wanted to discuss the other Supreme Court thing, which is apparently tyranny. That okay, so I'm so tired of discussing this. Okay, fine. So
and I know we're on the same page about this, because that ruling should never have been made in the first place.
Okay, so the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, which was a landmark case. What Roe v. Wade actually did was create a federal protection for abortion, meaning that states, regardless of their local laws as per federalism, had to bow to the general federal government and forcibly allow abortions to certain levels. And it was decided on, well, as time has revealed, some not so honest prepositions, events that, shall we say, didn't quite occur as were advertised. With what some would say was perjured evidence and fictitious circumstances. But here's the thing. Okay, so that's what it did. They said okay, and what they did is they said okay. Based on that, and and by the way, even some pro-choice advocates admit that even though they got what they wanted out of Roe v. Wade, that if they're being totally intellectually honest on a judicial level, it was a bad call. It was a very bad call that stayed for far too long. So, and it was made up of like, they even made like the write-up of, what is it, out of like the 9th and 14th Amendment. They're like the emanation and penumbras that come from this. I'm like, okay, so you're really just making a whole cloth, a whole new right out of emanation and penumbras, the vapors of that exist between these amendments, somewhere between them, if you look at it the right way and you squint the right way, So here's the thing. Especially in the libertarian movement, some libertarians are really freaking out about this, and they're mostly libertarian left. But besides that, I think that especially libertarians, even if they're pro-choice, should celebrate this, and everyone should celebrate this. And here is why: because this now devolves, as it were, power down to the states. And that means, so for those of you who live outside the US, or actually honestly those of you who live in the US, because as it turns out, most Americans don't know how their own system and laws work. So the federal protection is gone. That does not mean that abortion is now illegal. In fact, Roe v. Wade, there were laws around it before even Roe v. Wade existed. What it means is your local government now or down to like the state level, it's now a decision for states, which is where it should have always been. So if you live in states like Colorado or California or New York or Vermont or Maine, then you can yeet your baby until he's 65 for all they care. You know,
can still partake in the eugenics project that is Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, like never mind the absolute eugenics project that was and is Planned Parenthood, aka as it started out as the Negro Project. That's what Margaret Sanger called it. She wanted to annihilate the black race. That was the actual thing. You can still partake in your eugenics, and you can eat your kid till you're 65. But if you live in a state like Texas, I think it's 6 weeks with the heartbeat law, and here in Florida, I think it's still 15 weeks. So there's a couple of layers to peel back. First of all, like I said, you should be celebrating, because especially if you're libertarian, because that's one state power that's been devolved down. So by the way, 15 weeks is pretty late. Lots of people we should be more like Europe. Have you checked the laws in Europe? Because your average state in Europe bans it at 12, 14 weeks. I think the only exception is like the UK, where you can yeet your baby basically before seconds before birth. But through most of Europe, Western Europe, it's 14 weeks, and in Eastern Europe, in most cases, it's very early, sort of Texas style, or not unless it threatens the health of the mother. And by the way, there is despite all the misinformation going around, there isn't a single state with a single law that criminalizes, having a miscarriage, or criminalizes having to deal with an ectopic pregnancy. None of you actually look at the laws. None of them criminalize. In fact, even if you do have the abortion against the laws, it still doesn't jail the mother. It actually jails the person performing it. But anyway, so it's done that, and so I'd like to point out that 15 weeks, even in a fairly red state like Florida, considering the average pregnancy is 40 weeks, 15 weeks is horrifically late to have an abortion. 50. And I was thinking about it this morning, and I think a lot of the reason a lot of pro-choice advocates actually change their minds is because they often come in face to face with the reality. It's like with things like, oh, I could live out in the country, or I could be a farmer, or I could be a great soldier. It's the problem of human abstraction from reality. Once you come face to face with the reality of war, combat, or the reality of living on a farm and farming for yourself, or the reality of what actually happens in an abortion, especially at 15 weeks, your mind does some recalculations, some serious recalculations. So yes, I would say that. Yes, I'll be honest. My bias is that I'm a pro-lifer, but beyond that, what people don't realize is that also now, if you're in a more blue state, you'll probably be able to make more extreme abortions, up until the point of birth. Some people are saying a month after, or something like that, something ridiculous like that. And
$10 says California is going to come up with late-term abortions, and then there might still be hope, because then you can take out the politicians way after. Going to legalize murder. I'm telling you, California is going to do that.
Well played. And then there's also the various companies and for the pro-choicers in more red states, I guess sort of empathize with you, but there are so many companies now that are saying, okay, we'll pay for you to go travel.
Oh, that is the slimiest piece of corporate stinginess that I've seen in a long time.
We'll pay for you to go have an abortion. And also New York, I think, is also considering just a national state fund. So they have taxpayer funded dollars that'll say, hey, we'll pay for the poor girl in Mississippi to come up here, have an abortion, leave. I think Senator Warren the other day was saying we should make federal land make abortion sanctuaries in national parks, because federal land are If you think this is the winning strategy going into 2022, you go ahead. I'm looking forward to these midterms.
I'm going to sit back and read Sun Tzu, and you go about your business. But it's one of those things where people. But what really was interesting to see is just how disingenuous the mainstream media is. or the legacy media, absolutely disingenuous. So there was the New York Times and a couple of other publications that ran this story about this 10-year-old girl that got raped and pregnant, and she was denied an abortion. And it turns out it was an article that they used from like 10, 15 years ago in Brazil, where a judge denied the girl. Brazil or some other South American country, where that's where that story comes from, and they ran it like it happened in the States.
Sounds about right.
That's just like, that's where you just like fire the editor. I mean, how does something like that make it to print? And people, and I don't understand why people are freaking out about it on the one side of the fence, and on the other side of the fence celebrating it. Because, like you said, the choice should have been at the state level in the first place. And then you can take, it's like much like if you think about it, take alcohol, for instance, in America. You still have dry counties where it's not even the state that decided, it's the county. It's devolved even lower down to the county level.
County, actually, like the one, it was somewhere around Alabama. It was a dry county, and it's literally the street that separates it. On the one side, gambling is legal, and on the other side, alcohol is legal, and that street is the county line. So people would just go buy tickets or liquor on either side of the street, and they'd be sorted both ways. Like, yeah, way to go with your laws. But anyway.
Place the bets for the dog track on the one side, walk across the road, go have a drink, and walk back and go and check the results.
Yeah, because now you're in a different county.
Yeah, but you can devolve it down to that level, because that's the best. Because then you can, if people, it makes for a more peaceful society in general. Because now you don't have to, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But the other argument that I have is the people that are celebrating it says, "Oh no, abortion, and I'm pro-life." And guys, the people that are going on about abortions and the women that get like 5, 6, 7 plus abortions, that's not really the kind of people that you want procreating in the first place. They're not very.
That is a fair point. I did not consider that. How can I put it?
They're not very socially beneficial persons to begin with. So I don't know.
In and of itself is almost a eugenics argument in and of itself.
I know, but it's eugenics by natural select, by how can I say, uncoerced choice. I mean, if that's how you want to live your life, not hurting anyone, well, besides unborn children, but that's a different argument. But I mean, it doesn't affect you, your family, or your community. It's not going to have an impact. In fact, it might actually have a positive impact in the long run. Because go and look at places like, if you take with the drugs, go look at places like California. I mean, Skid Row and New York. You've got areas like that as well. It's an absolute mess. So now you want the people that live in that type of environment, that culture, and you want them to get more? Really? People don't think about things. They really don't. Just sit down and just think about it for 2 seconds, and you'll see it's not. Firstly, it doesn't really affect you, and secondly, it's not as bad as you're making it out to be.
Also, I think I mean, there were some protests at the state capitol here in Florida, but like, I find that a lot of the people who get riled up about these things kind of tend to forget them after 2 months. Like in 2 months, nobody's going to care about Roe, but people still need to go to the grocery store every month or every week or so. And so I think that in terms of actual sociological issues, I think that the rampant inflation and utter destruction of the American, economic system is far, far more of an issue to people in the long run. I mean, to young, very young people, your 18 to 25 crowd that are still living with mom and dad, they feel less of an economic pinch than most people, and so for them things like Roe are more of an issue because you can always just use mom. The amount of times I've heard people in bars and stuff say, yeah, I've got my mom or dad's credit card, like it's horrifying. But
your parents qualify for a credit card?
Yeah, well, great. So so they've got their parents' money. So for them, the economy is not that much. I mean, I've spoken to Uber drivers here, and on game day, instead of taking like a 15-minute walk, people will pay $60 to get in an Uber.
That's Uber is one thing I don't get, because okay, here in South Africa, the prices are pretty similar to America from what I can, like, if you compare them on a level playing field, the costs are basically the same. There's no way in hell I'm paying that for a ride. No, then I just don't go.
Lots of people do.
It's
a lot of people
expensive.
in fraternities and sororities here do, but it kind of makes sense when you consider that, the annual fees in terms of being in a fraternity and a sorority, especially if you live in the actual frat house or the sorority house, because a large percentage, what people don't get is that a large chunk of people in a fraternity or sorority, a significant percentage of them don't actually live in the building. They live around town, they're members, and they check into the building all the time. And granted, these houses are palatial, they're huge, they're like
massive.
They're like double-digit number bedroom houses, okay? 12-bedroom house type thing. They're palatial places, and they're beautiful. The architecture, I mean, they were built, many years ago, and they are built by people who, admittedly, are sort of artists with their craft in terms of, you see these
when architects still used paper and pencil.
Yeah, and the columns, and it is beautiful and palatial and all that. So admittedly they're huge, but it's still not enough, because then the fraternity or sorority would be like 12 people. It's usually much more than that. So when you take into account the price of being in a frat or a sorority, and you take into account if they buy like a meal plan and the rent of the room there and all that, they basically pay every year 1.5 times what the normal tuition is. So they, if they're in a fraternity, so they, because or sorority, so if they're in Greek life, they pay their tuition plus the cost of being in Greek life is about half, maybe sometimes more. I've heard some people say it's basically like paying your tuition twice. So doubling your interns. So you're paying an extra tens of thousands of dollars, and people have parents that can afford this. So if they have parents that can afford this, then to them it makes sense in my mind that they think it makes economic sense to pay $60 instead of taking the 15, maybe 20-minute walk to the stadium on game day. They'd rather pay $16 than take a 15-20-minute walk. I think it's financially stupid, but I get why to them it makes economic sense, if as it were.
But it just reminded me of something that I thought about a while ago. The whole university system with the fraternities and sororities and all that's just basically like the American version of the caste system, isn't it?
It kind of is.
It seems, because if you think about all your presidents and senators and
league as well, if you went to like an Ivy League or like
school
or even like a top 20 university in the school, like if it's a top 10, top 20 university in the United States, I mean, top 20. I mean, FSU's in the top 20 public schools. The top 20 doesn't sound that much, but when you consider how many universities there are just in like the state of Florida, actually I should Google that, but when you consider how many there are per state, just being in the top 20 in the entire United States is a feat in and of itself.
Because a while back I was going through, for some reason, checking like all the presidents and senators and presidents of other countries and stuff, and the amount of overlap between like the Ivy League schools and sororities, and it's like a separate little caste from the rest of society. Yes, US has approximately 5,300 colleges and universities.
Yeah, that
is a lot.
But then you extrapolate it and you understand that if you look at the land mass of the United States, 5,000 sounds like a lot, but then you look at the land mass of the United States.
And the population, I mean, it's
the land mass and the population. It's actually not that disproportionate to the land mass and the population. I mean, it's like saying how many universities are there in the entirety of Europe?
Yeah. Oh, that's shit.
It's not that disproportionate. So
yeah, well, Europe has actually a lot less than I thought. 2,700 about.
Just Western Europe or the whole of Europe, like East and West?
Europe, up until you hit the border of Russia.
Oh.
That's not that many.
Huh.
But also, yeah, Europe Europe has a couple of big cities, but like excluding like England now, they have like one or two big cities, and the rest is it's rather sparsely populated.
Yeah, and their population hasn't exactly been skyrocketed.
No, it hasn't been booming
for the last, like, since even before, like, honestly, I don't think Europe's population, I mean, yeah, there were some booms, but I don't think Europe really took a population hike ever since the Black Death. Like,
I mean, they've got from 2018 estimates about 746 million population of the entire Europe.
Between Genghis Khan and the Black Death, like Europe never took a population hike. It was Genghis. There was the Black Death. There was Genghis. There was the endless European state wars. Where you had.
Then there was this little skirmish in 1914, and then there another little skirmish in 1940 that also didn't help a lot.
So yeah, like the endless wars and all that. It's like the population just never really hiked up.
But still, I mean, if you think about this, the whole of Europe, it's only 700 and let's up at 750 million people. I mean, India alone has more than that, and that's just one country.
Yeah,
that's a surprisingly small population.
So yeah, as much as I despise the alt-right types, there is a certain kernel of truth when they say demographics is destiny. They're just wrong about how the demographics is destiny. If you have the same things happening to Japan, where you have a aging population. Speaking of which, I guess the Prime Minister of Japan just got assassinated.
The old Prime Minister,
former Prime Minister. Yeah. So there's a lot to unpeel here. First of all, Japan is a country where it is essentially illegal for private citizens to own a gun. It is.
Yeah, it is.
And the gun that kills
very, very difficult.
It is. That's why I say it is functionally or essentially illegal to own a gun for any reason whatsoever. And surprise, surprise, the dude still got murked. And
but what's really disappointing to me was because it was like a little homemade gun that he used, is that it looked like something slapped together in Africa. I would have expected it.
It looks like a pipe weapon from if anyone's ever played Fallout, the Fallout games. In Fallout 4 they introduced pipe weapons. It looks like a slam fire pipe shotgun type thing.
Yeah, I mean, we built better shotguns than that in machine class in high school. But it really looks like an African, like something slapped together in Africa somewhere, like in Congo or something. I would have expected a nice little 3D printed thing because it is Japan. I mean, the guy didn't even do much effort. It's disappointing. But yeah, that is an interesting one because there was sort of rumors that he might run for PM again with come their next election, but I don't know how accurate that is. But that's an interesting one to see. It's one of those. He got assassinated. Boris Johnson and half of his cabinet walked.
Yeah, so that's why I say, like, I occasionally tweet from my account, the wheel of fate is turning, and I genuinely believe that saying. And so with Shinzo, it's particularly interesting because it could have just been some disgruntled guy, but as Styx Hexenhammer points out, I wouldn't be surprised if China had a hand in it, because Shinzo Abe is the most titanic anti-communist / anti-China figure in the East right now. and he's a titanically
was
pro-West, pro-America figure. He was very much in favor of Japan reforming its pacifist constitution, saying, no, we need to arm up and we need to militarily muscle up.
And I can understand why that makes China a bit anxious. Because the last time Japan did that, China took a beating.
They didn't play very nice with the military they had before. Granted, they didn't play very nice with the military that they had before. That being said, I think given the nature of Japan now, a militarily strong Japan would be good for the world in terms of hemming in China. And so he was anti-China, anti-communist, very pro-military strength of Japan, very sort of conservative and nationalistic, very, very pro-military strength of Japan. Granted, as I said, Japan didn't, and I think most of the West, given their inability to muscle up, is, aside from the United States military that has remained relatively strong, a strong Japan would benefit most, especially Western Europe, in terms, again, of hemming in China and serving as a jump-off point, because
Taiwan's prospects of staying independent has just took a massive knock.
Yeah,
because he would have been one of the biggest proponents to support Taiwan should China actually full on do an invasion of Taiwan or try and overthrow it.
It might be a matter of time now. It's just like
because like what he was hours after he passed away, they had like Chinese Air Force fighter jets going over Taiwan, like full on into the airspace, not just making a little turn into it, like just going over Taiwan.
Yeah.
But that's but I would like to know what's behind the whole debacle in the British cabinet, because that was something else.
So, and I will say, to close off this Shinzo thing, I mean, people didn't think as much as they did. Styx Hexenhammer might be right when he said something to the effect of, this might be some version of our own version of Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated. Oof. Like, that's really what kicked the powder keg. So maybe this is our version of that now, because you might see people calling for vengeance. So.
I'm getting, as every month that goes by, I get a little bit more uneasy about the state of more the stability of the world, because it just keeps on creeping closer and closer and closer to round 3, because everything just feels so tense and so electrified. It's like something hanging about, because you've got British politics. I mean, that was the PM and 50 of his cabinet members that resigned or something like that. That is a huge mess there. Shinzo getting assassinated. You got Sri Lanka
I'm pretty sure Neville
bankruptcy.
Chamberlain went and resigned. When did Chamberlain resign? Just before.
I think for 1940.
What year was it? 1940, Neville Chamberlain? So you got an assassination, you got this guy resigning, but BOJO resigning was just due to him being such a massive hypocrite during Big Rona, like, and his parties, like.
Yeah, he resigned in 1940, Chamberlain.
Yeah, so history doesn't exactly repeat, but it certainly rhymes. So,
rhymes. And if you look at just the general, I mean, you've got the US president that can't even read off a teleprompter anymore. But he's going to be out just after November in any case.
Oh, they're already pushing to get rid of him. Like the amount of people who want him to not run anymore, and like.
I said this from the beginning. Though he is going to be out come December. They're going to boot him out come December, because then Kamala has a shot at running 10 years solid. That's what they're going to try and do. Mark my words, that's what they're going to try and do.
Really? You think they'd be foolish enough to try run Kamala Harris?
They'll try and run it. They're going to try and run it. AOC?
Yeah.
Not even the Democrats are dumb enough to run AOC.
I think you underestimate.
No one is.
AOC
I don't even think the ANC is that dumb.
AOC is she's
think
32.
she's too young.
32. So for 2024, she might be old enough in 2024.
I think what's the minimum wage? 35, if I remember.
35, 34. She might be turning 35 by the time the actual presidential election rolls around.
Yeah, but I mean, because if
October, so she's turning 33 this year. By the time the presidential election rolls around, she'll be old enough.
Yeah, but the thing is, because if Biden gets taken out, then Kamala takes over, but that's why, and I said it from the beginning, they're going to wait till after he just passed the 2-year mark, because otherwise she's going to suffer the same fate as our favorite president.
I would say I'd wager they'd rather run AOC or Gavin Newsom. I really doubt they'd even.
No, well, they're going to put Kamala in, and she's going to finish the last bit less than 2 years, and I think they're going to run her. I think 2024 they're going to run her. I think they're going to be stupid enough to run her.
In the Republican Party, there is what I said the last cycle. There was the conflict between the never Trumpers and the Trumpers. This time around, it's going to be a conflict between the ever Trumpers, the people who say Trump forever and ever, and the we need to winners. Because let's face it, as much as he might, I think realistically he would be a better asset to the Republican Party by staying a kingmaker and staying back and endorsing something. There's just too much bad juju attached to him right now. But hey, if you guys want to run him again, run him again. He's not much younger than Joe Biden. But at least
cognitively is far better than Joe Biden.
Again, I refer to my theory that he has eaten so much McDonald's in his life that he's now
preserved.
Yeah, he's now 99% preservative. But hey, I think they would have a much better shot running someone like Glenn Youngkin or Ron DeSantis or Glenn Youngkin. Much better shot at winning.
I wouldn't.
Presidency.
I think DeSantis. I would leave DeSantis running Florida until 2028. Give DeSantis. The problem is this: besides DeSantis, the Republicans don't really have a candidate that's got national presence that people actually know about. There's no one they know about. They know about Trump. Everybody knows Trump, especially after his term. But I mean, DeSantis is the only other Republican candidate that everybody knows. So anybody else that they run is going to be known in certain states, but it's going to be relatively unknown in the other states.
I was going to say that might actually work in their favor, because if you look at their exit polls on when you polling right now, if you see a generic Republican versus Joe Biden is still not a bad run. It's quite close. Now, if they run a Ron DeSantis, then he'll probably win. But even a generic Republican, given how far things have done, when you have school boards kicking out very liberal school parents in very liberal states, kicking out these liberal school boards that are teaching increasingly more progressive stuff, when you have California recalling when you have cities in California trying to recall Gavin Newsom, successfully recalling their attorney generals, their soft on crime attorney, then I think even a generic Republican would do pretty well. But
I really think what the Democratic Party is going to do is they're going to take out Biden after November, and then Kamala is going to take over the show, and then they're going to bring in the illusion that things are getting better. So then you're going to see fuel prices are going to start dropping, inflation is going to come down. They're going to wangle it in such a way so that it just starts going better and better and better for that last stretch up until the election to make her look good. I think they're going to run it. But like I said, you've got, even if you run a generic, that's the problem now. If they pull that stunt and they run a generic candidate, then by the time you get to 2024, that generic candidate's not going to stand a chance. Because the illusion that the economy is doing better is going to be so strong, because especially if you take the fuel price and inflation, that's killing them right now. It's absolutely slaughtering them. So if that improves, and we know how people are, it doesn't have to go back to pre-2020 levels. It just has to get a little bit better, and then people are going to clap like seals. They're gonna need to in the next 2 years get a candidate lined up that is well known and strong. Like DeSantis is a good candidate, but I would actually like to see him run Florida for a bit longer. Just get Florida nicely cemented. Maybe sort out Miami in the meantime.
Miami's probably going to sort out itself. Like I saw Gavin Newsom ran an ad that appealed to people saying, "Come to California where we still believe in freedom." And he ran this ad on Fox News in in Florida. I'm like, bro, read the room. Yes. Yeah. I'm sure the 5 Democrats who still live in Florida in sort of very red Florida and who are willing and able to move to California. I'm sure the money you spent on that ad was worth getting those 5 extra votes to come to California.
Did you see one senator? I can't remember who it was. A black guy. His ad that he ran for his election campaign, where he would like kill the KKK members.
Yeah, that was chef's kiss. Mwah. So yeah. It was
like you need a guy like that, someone that's sort of Trumpish, someone that draws attention. But the problem that you have with that is then you get the CNN and the MSNBCs and those type. It just becomes public enemy number 1 immediately.
Yeah, it was Jerome Davison, Republican for
yes.
Caucus, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that was interesting. But the actual political thing that I am actually excited about is the reform that has been a long time coming in the Libertarian Party, which is the ascendancy of the Mises Caucus and the Reno Reset. I can now finally say that I am not ashamed to be a libertarian anymore. And she'll probably never hear this, but thank you, Angela McArdle and the Mises Caucus, for reforming the shit. I mean, there's still work to be done, but thank you, if you ever hear this, for reforming the absolute shit show that was the Libertarian Party. Enough of people going on the stage and booing fucking driver's license, or walking up on national conference stage, fat, hairy, naked guys walking up on conference stages because they're not violating the NAP. This is why we don't get elected, because despite being an actually good platform, and in my opinion still the platform closest to what the design of America was meant to be, we don't get elected because you become
an insane asylum.
Yeah, you become a meme, and libertarians have to decide: do you want to be a meme or do you want to win? And that's why I love the Mises, and I know it's very iconoclastic, but and it probably pisses and the factions, the libertarian factions that it pisses off the most are what I call the lolberts, or a lot of people who are like basically social democrats masquerading as libertarians. So unfortunately, and I know I dig on them, but unfortunately it's majority libertarian left. Like, it's just the rainbow flag, trans flag, every flag in your fucking profile, but still libertarian. Also, capitalism is bad, but I'm somehow still a libertarian. No, you're not. You're a social democrat masquerading as a libertarian. And the fact that it pisses off those people just made it so much more delicious. So for those of you who don't know, there was an uprising in the Libertarian Party by what is called the Mises Caucus, who are basically what libertarians used to or should have been, is that just focus on strong, sound economic principles and making and they've taken out all the weird language about, we have to condemn bigotry and all that. Like, look, nobody likes it. Like McCardle said in her interview, I don't like it when people use those terms, but when you specifically put that plank in your party platform, it gives people ammunition to call other people in the party bigots when you can't decide on what a bigot is. So while they put and people are like, they took out the no bigotry plank in the thing, and like, they also replaced it with we respect the rights of every individual, which in my opinion is enough to cover the no bigotry thing. The no bigotry plank is what generated a lot of infighting in the Libertarian Party. And I get it. There's going to be some icky people, but in the long run, I think it's going to be worth it. And I guess, like I said, a lot of the Mises Caucus people are fans of people like Rockwell and Lou Rockwell and Hans Hermann Hoppe, who I think has the most realistic libertarian take on things like restricted immigration but free trade, because that's one of the libertarian things I never like, this idea that you can truly have just full on open borders. I agree. You should strongly reform your immigration policies, but libertarians who think, fuck it, they're not doing anything wrong as they cross the border. If you have 1 million people in your country and 10 million diehard communists immigrate there,
you don't have a country anymore.
Yeah, with no incentive to change. Never mind culturally, because culturally it's no longer the country you wanted it to be. But in a little bit, those communists are going to want to change it. And they're going to, regardless of your principles of the NAP, they will have what they want, either by the bullet or by the ballot, but they will have what they want. So I'm sorry, kids. This fantasy of total open borders, I don't buy it. But
there's such a big wide open gap that the Libertarian Party can use, because the United States, like most other countries, has got abysmally low voter turnout. People don't go and vote because what are they voting for? I mean, you've got the Republicans and the Democrats, and just basically the same party for all intents and purposes. So there's always this big center that's waiting for someone to vote to. But instead, they went complete insane asylum. Looks like the cast out of, I don't know, One Fly Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And they don't know what, it's just absolute ridiculousness. So yeah, it's a good thing that they're starting to get coming back to reality a bit more. Maybe they have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that was most refreshing is that, people like McCardle and crew are like, yeah, we know we're not going to win the national election. We're focusing on things like winning over school boards and local, local sort of mayoral posts and maybe one or two state governors, and that's a more realistic focus.
That's the best thing that they can do, is focus on starting with your small, like mayors running under your flag, and then you can slowly work it up. Because I listened to an interview a while ago. It is to get into run as a state senator under a Republican or Democratic flag is
or commissioner of a department.
Yeah, is insanely difficult and insanely expensive. But it's by design. I mean, the Republicans and the Democrats, they designed the system in such a way that it is difficult for outsiders to get in. So they're protecting their little fiefdom. So the best thing they can do is just start at the low level and slowly build up, get a bunch of mayors in, and then you work up from there. Then you can start building it up like that. You can't just go in and put guys with boots on their heads to run on stage, or naked, hairy guys to go on stage and expect people to vote for them. They're not going to do that. It's never going to work, ever.
Yeah.
They're not going to take you seriously, not in a million years. Start at the grassroots, the lowest level you can, and build it from there upwards. Start one town, one state, and you just take it from there, step by step by step. So I really hope they keep it together this time.
I think they will, and considering the number of people who have now said they will or have abandoned the Libertarian Party, I'm like, yes, good. You're pissing off all the right
people,
the right kinds of quote unquote libertarians.
Because that's one thing that the American politics really needs is a third, like, sane people's, like, quote unquote people's party, someone that actually gives a voice to your everyday citizen on the ground, to slowly start gaining momentum. Otherwise, if you don't have that coming in, the two main parties are never going to reform. You can forget it. Nothing's going to change there. They've been like this for what's it now? More than 100 years. They're not going to change now.
Yeah, it's like
the beast is too big. I mean, they need a third party to come in that's actually serious about it and to slowly build momentum and build support.
Yeah. Well put. Yeah. That's about all I've got for now. Unless,
I think that's about it for this week.
Yeah. Congrats on the sweet new condenser mic, by the way. It's sounding brilliant. I think we'll see you guys next week-ish. Summer is coming to an end, and I'll try get my shit in gear. But happy post 4th of July, and this is going to be an interesting midterm election.